A 2014 systematic review and meta-analysis of dietary patterns and depression concluded that a healthy diet pattern was significantly associated with reduced odds of depression. But out of the 21 studies they could find in the medical literature, they were only able to find one randomized controlled trial, considered the study design that provides the highest level of evidence, and it was the study I profiled in Improving Mood Through Diet, in which removing meat, fish, poultry, and eggs improved several mood scores in just 2 weeks. We've known that those eating plant-based tend to have healthier mood states, less tension, anxiety, depression, anger, hostility, and fatigue. But you couldn't tell if it was cause and effect until you put it to the test, which they finally did. But what could account for such rapid results? Well, eating vegetarian does give you a better antioxidant status, which may help with depression. Also, as I previously addressed, how consumption, even a single carbohydrate-rich meal, can improve depression, tension, anger, confusion, sadness, fatigue, alert, and calmness scores among patients with PMS. But what about long-term? Overweight men and women were randomized into a low-carb, high-fat diet or a high-carb, low-fat diet for a year. By the end of the year, who had less depression, anxiety, anger, and hostility, feelings of dejection, tension, fatigue, better vigor, less confusion, or mood disturbances? The low-carb dieters are represented by the black circles, and the low-fat dieters are represented in the white. These sustained improvements in mood in the low-fat group compared with the low-carb group are consistent with results from epidemiological studies showing that diets high in carbohydrates and low in fat and protein are associated with lower levels of anxiety and depression, and have beneficial effects on psychological well-being. The overall amount of fat in their diet didn't change in this study, though, but the type of fat did. Their arachidonic acid intake fell to 0. Arachidonic acid is an inflammatory omega-6 fatty acid that can adversely impact mental health via a cascade of neuroinflammation. It may inflame our brain. High blood levels in the bloodstream have been associated with a greater likelihood of suicide risk, for example, and major depressive episodes. How can we stay away from this stuff? Well, Americans are exposed to arachidonic acid primarily through chicken and eggs. But when you remove chicken and eggs and other meat, we can eliminate preformed arachidonic acid from our diet. So while high-quality treatment studies investigating the impact of diet on depression are scarce, there is that successful 2-week trial. But even better, how about 22 weeks? Overweight or diabetic employees of a major insurance corporation received either weekly group instruction on a whole food plant-based diet or no diet instruction for 5.5 months. There was no portion size restriction, no calorie counting, no carb counting, no change in exercise, no meals were provided, but the company cafeteria did start offering daily options such as lentil soup, minestrone, bean burritos. No meat, eggs, dairy, oil, or junk, yet they reported greater diet satisfaction compared with the control group participants who had no diet restrictions. How'd they do, though? More participants in the plant-based intervention group reported improved digestion, increased energy, better sleep than usual at week 22 compared with the control group. They also reported a significant increase in physical functioning, general health, vitality, and mental health. Here's this all kind of represented graphically, where the plant-based group beat out controls on nearly every measure. There was also significant improvements in work productivity, thought to be due in large part to their improvements in health. So what this study demonstrated was that a cholesterol-free diet is acceptable not only in research settings, but in a typical corporate environment, improving quality of life and productivity at little cost. All we need now is a large randomized trial for confirmation, but we didn't have such a thing until now. 10 corporate sites across the country, from San Diego to Macon, Georgia, same kind of setup as before. Can a plant-based nutrition program in a multi-center corporate setting improve depression, anxiety, and productivity? Yes. Significant improvements in depression, anxiety, fatigue, emotional well-being, and daily functioning. Lifestyle interventions have an increasingly apparent role in physical and mental health, and among the most effective of these is the use of plant-based diets.
A Malaysian scuba diving instructor once told me I couldn't have any lunch because I was too fat for my wetsuit. Yeah, that made me pretty depressed. But what if fat really could make you depressed? To understand how takes us on a journey across our entire approach to science. You see, scientists are a lot like scuba divers. They plunge deeper and deeper into their specific area of research, finding some interesting things, but not necessarily thinking about how they connect with everything else in the sea of human knowledge. So we end up with immunologists over here, studying how the immune system uses chemical messages called cytokines to communicate between cells. And at the same time over here, psychologists had noticed that when we're physically ill, we also change the way we think, feel, and behave. So how does the brain know we've got an infection? And then somewhere else entirely, doctors are wondering why cancer treatments are making some of their patients depressed. Could drugs based on cytokines be changing the way we feel? It turns out that cytokines are doing what a lot of scientists aren't. They're communicating across boundaries. These chemical messages intended for other immune cells are actually being picked up and read by the brain. It's kind of like Facebook and the US government. Cytokines always affect your memory as well. Okay, so cytokines, oh, crap. Hi, everyone at home. So by cytokines, it turns out that by working together, scientists realized that cytokines can use the signals to communicate to the brain and even travel into the brain itself, tell us that we've got an infection and make us feel lethargic and in need of warmth and comfort food. Now, if you're ill, that's helpful because it encourages you to rest and recover. But if it's just a chronic side effect of cancer treatments, then it's much less helpful. But this was a story about fat, because fat isn't just an inert tissue, it's an active tissue that's producing cytokines. And these cytokines make you tired, unmotivated, and in need of chocolate. So it leads to this vicious cycle where fat makes you depressed, and at the same time, depression encourages you to engage in behaviors that go on and make you fat. So this isn't an excuse.
Sorry, Vicky.
I've never done that before.
The thing is, you do it again and again and again at home, and it's perfect. And what happened to you there is exactly what happened to me in my first Fame Lab. I was talking, and then it all disappeared. And so, but it's not the end of the world. Remember that. And it was a beautiful presentation. But you were talking about one thing. You were talking about scientists over here, scientists over there. What do you think of the benefit of scientists all working together?
Well, the fact is that when we're studying the human body, it works together. So cytokines have always been thought of as part of the immune system, but we know they communicate with the brain, we know that they're produced by fat and so on, and so whilst the body is working in that interactive way, then we have to work in that interactive way, or else we're never actually going to understand what's going on.
Can I just say, with your name,
Why do you just not call it it fat? Then you could have Vicky Burns fat.
Nice.
It would have been lovely. No, it's great. No, what's wrong with that? I mean, it's interesting when you're talking about interdisciplinary science. And I'm going to pick up on where Maggie sort of pinched my question. You're reading again. Now, it's really important. Do you think the boundaries of science are within disciplines or at the boundaries of those disciplines?
I think we push on most where we take people who've got specific specialisms and then bring them together to see how they interact to solve the bigger issues. Because most of our bigger issues in society, whether they're biological, obesity, depression, as I talked about today, or climate change and so on, they're interdisciplinary problems. And so what I would have said, had I not forgotten all my words, was that we have to bear these in mind when we're thinking about public health interventions, because a lot of public health interventions assume that if you just tell people that something's good for them, then they'll do it more. But actually, there's all these biological drivers that make that really unlikely, that they will always adhere to these healthy behaviours. And so we need to design these interventions so that they actually deal with reality and improve population health.
Tough call, it's really difficult, and I've also done exactly that thing. I dried up. I was 7 years old at the time.
Oh, that's going to make it feel better.
I remember it with shame to this day. So
were you wearing a wetsuit at the same time?
No, I wasn't. But I was going to ask, actually, because classically, you see people who are obese who also have heart disease, they develop dementias, they have diabetes. Is this all the inflammatory process that's initiated by cytokines from fat?
Not necessarily associated with the cytokines from fat, but yes, all of those things are linked by inflammation. It's one of the really exciting things that's going on at the moment. So all the conditions that you mentioned, they're associated with higher levels of inflammation, and they're related together. So if you have any one of them, you're likely to have quite a few of them. And what that does is it opens up a whole load of new treatment options. So for example, we know that exercise can reduce your baseline levels of inflammation, and that's one of the reasons why it's beneficial, not just in terms of helping you lose weight, but also in terms of reducing that inflammation, reducing your risk of diabetes and obesity and so on. And it also opens up the possibility of having anti-inflammatory solutions to depression, for example. If we know that these things are related, people are now investigating whether you can use antidepressants at the same time as anti-inflammatories to have greater effects on depression than just using the antidepressants.
Great answer. Not too late to ululate for Vicky Burns.